Welcome everybody to Books by Adrian. Welcome Shawn.
Hey, thanks Adrian. Thanks for having me on.
The unprecedented Shawn.
I
don't know if you've noticed, but that's what I've been calling you.
I don't know if that's a compliment or potentially a warning.
It is simply the word that I can think of to describe you. Unprecedented.
Well, thank you, man. Here's to you.
Welcome to the show. Dude, the chat is already hopping.
That's a good thing. Who's here?
This is bananas. Everybody. All right, let's take it up. All right, Barrett Laurie was first through the door. Welcome, dude.
Nice to see you, Barrett.
Colin Clark, my man.
What's up, Colin? With great beard comes great responsibility, Colin.
True. My literal sister from the same mother. Who else? We got Richard's here. What's up, dude?
Hey, Richard.
Man, everybody's here. All right, so then they're saying hi to each other. I'm going to skip all that. You guys know you said hi to each other. You don't need to see that up here. Don White's here.
Don, what's up,
Bethany.
Man?
The great Bethany Bota. Benjamin. Suey. I must say I'm unfamiliar with Lena. Hello, Lena. Welcome.
I have met. Well, I mean, I've met her online. Yeah, she occasionally comes to Don't Drink and Live. She's kind of a lurker. Lena doesn't like to reveal herself very much. Probably you shouldn't do that, especially.
No, yeah, she doesn't have a profile picture. Sneaky.
What are we talking about today?
Well, everyone, welcome. And we're going to, first off here, talk to the gentleman, Shawn. Is it this way? This way. You just had a book come out.
I did, as a matter of fact.
It's called Evil Grows in the Dark. It's freaking awesome.
So,
how long did it take you to do these stories, and how long did it take you to get it out? Congratulations on the bestseller, man.
Oh, thanks a lot, man. I really appreciate that. So how long did it take me to get them out? So these stories, some of them are very old. The first story in the book is called Lydia, and it's the first short story I ever finished. And I remember the reason I wrote that story was actually a promise I made to myself as I had just finished my first full-length novel. It's called Children of Doom. Someday I'm going to get back to that bad boy because I love the characters in the story. But I always knew I kind of wrote by myself, but I always knew that a lot of writers would write a book and then take a big break. And I didn't want that to be me. So what I decided to do was I made a rule that the second I write the end on a novel, I'm going to immediately start the next story. And I thought, well, the best thing to do isn't to dive right back into another 180,000 word book, but it might be to just write something short. So that was actually 7 years ago that I wrote Lydia. And I literally wrote it the same day that I wrote the end on my first novel. So the stories in Evil Grows in the Dark actually spread across the better part of a decade, written at different times and different places.
That's amazing, man, especially since you finished a novel first and then went to a short story.
Yeah,
kind of backwards.
It's funny. We're going to have a conversation about story structure and kind of the rules and the shapes of stories. But I was very much a rebel when I started. Like, people told me you need to plan your first book, and I didn't. I completely pantsed it. They said don't have lots of characters. I had, I think, 20-something POV characters. Don't write a long book. I wrote close to 200,000 words. I pretty much broke every rule that you're supposed to follow when you're getting started. So, and I think it's good. I mean, I learned a lot of lessons doing that that I couldn't have learned without making those mistakes. But what was really special to me about Evil Grows in the Dark is kind of it was almost an accidental thing that had happened. And I was talking to my #1 critique partner and partner in crime, and that's Bethany Bota. And
Vota.
I have to get her name right eventually, or I potentially will just continue to get it wrong on purpose. what? One day I was just like, hey, I'm going to put out a short story collection. She's like, oh, that's a good idea. When? And I'm like, in 2 weeks. So I just grabbed stories I'd already written and sent 3 of them to Bethany, which she quickly, speedily edited them for me. And I didn't have her edit the fourth story because it's a little bit controversial subject matter. And I didn't want her name on it, just in case people got offended. They can just hate me, not her. But
yeah,
the whole thing came together in about 3 weeks, from the idea to do it, to the editing, to the formatting, to the cover design, and to it being up on Amazon.
It's fast, man. It's nice to grab from across your writing journey like that. That's really interesting to me because it shows a whole lot of growth in one novel. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can see where things started for you and where they went, so to speak, not knowing which stories came first, second, but if Lydia came first, then that gives me a vague idea. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. The thing about all of those stories is 2 of them actually follow the hero's journey extremely tightly. Something missing the second story in the book. We're going to talk about the hero's journey in under 15,000 words. I can't remember quite how long it is, but it's not much over 10,000. But in just over 10,000 words, I hit all 12 stages of the hero's journey. I didn't mean to; it just happened. And but they were all pantsed, completely pantsed. When I started writing Lydia, I didn't even know what it was going to be. I just had an idea of 2 guys, a guy being interrogated in a white room. I kind of was thinking of the scene in The Matrix where Mr. Smith, or Agent Smith, has got Neo at the desk, but I just wanted it to be 2 men in a white room, which you're not supposed to do that either, right? You're not supposed to write in a white room. So I decided to do that for sure.
It's okay. The fact that you're a pantser really blows my mind, because obviously it lends credence to how much you write and how quickly, but it terrifies me to be a pantser to that degree. I can't do it. I always tell people I'm a gardener, which means I have a plan, but I don't always know exactly how it's going to end up. I allow room for like a little pantsing, but I always adjust along the way as well. If I commit to something that came out of like writing that freely, then I have to go back to my outlines. I have to stick it in there. I have to figure out how everything flows again now. Like I always have to go back because the road forward isn't going to be as clear to me. And I kind of need a map.
Well, I would say that I'm not a pantser anymore. I still pants short fiction, and I almost, that's a gift I give myself so that I can enjoy the process of discovery, because I don't have to commit as much time to finish a 5 to 15,000 word short story. I call 15,000 words a short story. Some people call it a novella, but I like to write in that
15,000 is a short story.
Yeah, I really enjoy creating in that range, and it lets me try things that are hard without the fear of wasting an enormous amount of time. And it's also something I do between each novel that I write. I write something shorter immediately, and it's a ritual that I kind of put in place after my first novel. I think I've written 9 novels now.
Now, having written that many novels, why haven't any of them seen the light of day yet?
Because I wanted to be good first. So the one thing I understood in the beginning of my kind of writing journey, it was that I wasn't any good because I was new. And it's the same thing as if, the first time you get on a jiu-jitsu mat as a white belt, there's just not a damn thing you can do.
Yeah. Yeah. You just have to sort of surrender.
I just wanted to accept the fact that I sucked and get better over time. And then I made a terrible mistake, and I queried my first book for agents, and it was literally immediately I got responses and full reads. And I think it's literally the worst thing I could have possibly done. And I think I made the best choice, as I actually turned offers down and went back and just wrote another book. And
so even though your book was good and you knew your book was good, you still felt as a writer that you had so much more to develop before you sort of came out to the world, right? Is that what you're saying?
it wasn't just that, but I was still doing a lot in my military career that I had a lot of goals I wanted to accomplish. And I wasn't a master of my material. It was kind of my master. And I didn't want to feel like that. I didn't want to feel helpless when I was writing. And by that, I mean, so the story would take turns and I didn't know how to shift it back the way I wanted to go. So in some ways, I was kind of helpless as a writer in the beginning, in that I couldn't make a decision. They were saying, okay, the editor's probably going to want to change this, this, and this. And I didn't even know if I could do it. And they were talking to me as if I was a level of writer that I didn't feel like I was yet. And it wasn't imposter syndrome. And I know it kind of sounds like it. It was just realism. I went, there's no way the first round of golf I play, I should be playing in the PGA. I need to get better. So that's really what made me make the decision. And also that I didn't know how to edit my own story. And so if an editor came to me and said, okay, you need to get rid of 3 characters and, you need to change the climax and all that stuff, I didn't even know if I could do it. So instead of launching myself into kind of an iffy career and signing all the rights over to my first story, it's merciless. They want everything. They get everything. It's theirs till your death plus 70 years. And you can't do anything.
Yeah.
I thought, you know what, I'm just going to keep writing. And that's what I did. So I wrote another book immediately, a sci-fi book called The School, kind of a space opera about Ranger School in space. And I got the idea actually in real life Ranger School. And
I remember you told the story on one of our Don't Drink in Lives, I think.
That's right. So, I immediately wrote another book. And that book, while I was writing that book, and this really dovetails tight into what we're going to talk about today. While I was writing that book, I discovered the work of Joseph Campbell. And I did that kind of indirectly because I was thinking about changing my major from English to psychology, because I had started reading Carl Jung's book, Archetypes in the Collective Unconscious. So through this like crazy discovery period, I discovered Joseph Campbell and the Hero's Journey and Carl Jung's Archetypes in the Collective Unconscious. And I started thinking, okay, if you're scared of not knowing what makes a story good, why don't you just figure it out? I mean, people are still telling the story of Gilgamesh, and it's been around for how many centuries? We're still, nobody can leave Middle Earth. We're still talking about hobbits and dwarves to this day. And why? And, why is Beowulf one of the greatest stories ever? Why the Odyssey? Like, why? There has to be a reason. It can't just be.
And a reason why they keep getting rewritten over and over and over in different books with different names, but that formula, continues forward.
So that was I hate calling it a formula. I think I like thinking of it more as an integral part of how people think. Like I think it obviously, I am a firm believer in evolution. Like, I believe that we are created from a process of change that is kind of pushed on us by necessity, by evolutionary pressure. And I think that it's embedded in us to a deep level that we can't even know with our conscious mind. As we first stepped out of the trees and started across the African savanna, venturing forth, looking for new sources of food and new places to live. And those first adventurers were the heroes on the hero's journey. And I think that that's embedded in us to a degree. It's something I talk about sometimes, this is kind of interesting. Dragons. I really think dragons are an echo of evolution, because if you're a tree-dwelling primate, you know what you're scared of? You're scared of snakes, big cats, and predatory birds. So if you smash all those together, you get a dragon. And that explains why there's countries separated by oceans that never communicated all have dragon mythology.
Huh.
They're tree cat snake birds.
That's a good theory.
So
that makes sense.
When I was writing that second novel, I decided that I wanted to pay a lot more attention to what makes stories good beyond writing a good sentence. And actually, I'd read some books that I thought were great, that the prose wasn't all that awesome. So I stopped worrying about trying to write pretty sentences, and I started going, okay, what's happening? And how can it speak to someone? I write action most of the time. So this is not a genre in which a lot of, deep truths are unveiled.
Yeah.
things blow up and people get shot, and so. But I was trying to look for how to put pieces of story that would move people in a way, even in a car chase or a fight scene or something like that.
Yeah, it's very reminiscent of my journey with it, because throughout my writing experience, anytime I'm working on a project and something seems to be happening with the story and I don't really understand why or how, I just know that it's happening. So then I have to like stop and figure it out and research and learn more about writing and figure out what it is that I don't know that's happening. And that's kind of how today's topic came around, actually, because I write, first of all, I use the general plot structure of a film script, which everybody thinks as a classic 3-act structure, but it actually has 5 to 7 turning points, which coincide very, very well with your 5 commandments of story.
Hey, I can't take credit for the 5 commandments of story. Robert McKee and Shawn Coyne really need to get credit for that. His excellent book, The Story Grid. Robert McKee is probably one of the foremost teachers of screenwriting in the world. And
yeah, he's one, exactly. And I believe he wrote the foreword on the scriptwriter's Bible, which is what I read to get my 7 turning points. Essentially, your first one and your 5th one are my 1st and 2nd, and my 6th and 7th. I split them into 2. So setup and catalyst are separate from each other, even though they usually happen in the same scene. So anyway, I use that to plot my stories, and I use it to plot my scenes and my chapters. I use it to plot everything. Every like level of storytelling, I use that 7 turning point structure. But what I didn't count on was my lead characters all having different character arcs. They're not all on the hero's journey, or they're not all, on the classic 3-act structure. So I had to actually like stop and go research character arcs and figure out what my character's arcs were. And I go, oh, that's what Lear's doing. That's what's happening with his story. So now that I understand it, I can write it better.
That's interesting. But the thing that I think we'll discover through this conversation, and the thing I kind of want to describe how I discovered it over the next few books, is that I delved into a lot of different kind of structural theory. I know you mentioned in the description Gustav Freytag's story pyramid. There's the 2 doorways. There's the 15 beats, save the cat, all that stuff. But what I discovered when I actually did my homework and started looking at them is that they're all the hero's journey, all of them. And the reason that isn't because Joseph Campbell was a genius, because he didn't discover the hero's journey. He just gave the movements names. It was already there. All of these scriptwriters and people are just finding different ways to describe the same thing, and some of them better ways. Because I will tell some people when I first start talking to them about the hero's journey, I'll say, hey, if this makes it hard for you to understand, let me just call it something else. And sometimes it just sparks in them. If I say return with the elixir, they're literally thinking that you're holding a vial in your hand, and it's
they can't wrap their heads around the metaphor, so you have to be like, well, yeah, it's the weapon that Zeus gives you or whatever.
Or seizing the sword doesn't always mean seizing a sword. It can be a lot of things. I was just going to do that high-pitched butt again, but Benjamin Milnes will make me. So
they've been grilling you, man.
What I want to describe to you here for just a minute, if you don't mind, Adrian, is the next books that I wrote and kind of what happened with the hero's journey. So
actually, that's exactly where I wanted to go, because you have 3 coming out, and I wanted to dovetail from those into today's topic. So 3 novels coming out over the next year. Is that correct?
3 novels by the end of the year, if I can manage it.
Tell me how, please. Explain yourself.
Well, and it goes into the process of writing books gets faster. It's an iterative process, and like anything that you do over and over again, you get better at it. Now, do I know subjectively if the books are going to be liked by everyone? I don't know, but my ability to kind of get through the process of writing, from idea generation to outlining to drafting to rewriting to editorial process, is getting better over time. And it's because I did a lot of mini practices. And actually, we're going to go back to Evil Grows in the Dark for a minute. Another reason that story will always be one of my favorites of all time is because it's the first time I worked with an editor. I had been terrified of doing it, and shout out to Bethany Votaw. She made it easy for me to try it the first time because it was somebody I trusted, and I actually read her writing, and I knew she had skill. So we did, and you can go check it out on my channel. There's a playlist, working with an editor. It's me and Bethany Votaw going through the process of turning Lydia from a giant steaming hunk of crap into a fairly readable story. So
fairly readable, he says.
Yeah, if it's good, all the credit.
My favorite one.
Anyway, so I've been kind of practicing for this, for my 4 novel a year plan. I'm trying to write 4 novels, 3 to 4 novels per year. So the next 2 novels I wrote after Children of Doom, I started writing a lot of short stories, which I think was one of the best decisions I ever made, because it's like, I call it lifting weights for writers, because I can go idea generation, draft, edit, and I can do it in a week. And I have a 10,000 word block of story that I've now gone through the whole process. Generate idea. What's going to happen? Draft, edit, revise, do it again. If you tried to just do that with novels, it might take you 30 years to get good at writing novels. I mean, some people do it way faster. They have help. They work with editors. But I just wanted to get there sooner, and I wanted to develop a repeatable and reliable method of coming up with story ideas. So my second novel, I actually looked at the hero's journey. I didn't know much about it. I read Chris Vogler's The Writer's Journey, which is honestly the best place to dip your toe into the hero's journey, because he breaks it down. Chris Vogler basically taught Walt Disney how to print money. So all of their best movies are just straight off the hero's journey. The Lion King, Aladdin, you name it, Pinocchio, all of them are just follow the stages. And they just ring true with people, with masses of people. So I said, I'm just going to write the story based off that. I had a cool story idea and I wrote it. And what was really surprising to me, I didn't want to do it because I didn't like rules. You can't tell me I have to do this in Act 2. Well, why can't I just do whatever I want? But I made myself do it. And what I found interesting was I was trying to rebel within the rules. So I'm like, okay, he has to go through, and there's a part in that book where all of these soldiers training to be space rangers, they have to go through a trial called archaism, where they're stripped of all their weapons. They're put in loincloths. They have no shoes. They have to make weapons and fight their way through a ravine, basically a gauntlet of death, in order to graduate. And a lot of them die. And that was my answer to the ordeal part of the hero's journey, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. I didn't want the ordeal to be going in a cave where the dragon is and doing it. I was like, then it sparked something in me, Adrian. I got to tell you, I started realizing, no, this is what creativity is. I need to be able to come up with a new way to do the ordeal every time I write a story, new and interesting.
Yeah.
But it has to hit the same emotional notes for my readers. So that's creativity, and some people gave me crap about the 5 commandments of story, which we can talk about that too. Because they're like, I can't do that every scene. I'm like, no, you have to do it every scene, and you have to come up with new ways to do it every scene. And to me, that's creativity. I always use the example of a chair. A chair has legs, a chair has a back. If it does not have legs and a back, you fall off, or it's not a chair, it's a stool. But there are a million beautiful artistic examples of wonderful craftsmanship of different kinds of chairs. But if it doesn't have the parts, it isn't a chair. The same thing with a story. Without an inciting incident, progressive complications, crisis, climax, and resolution, it might not be a story. It might be a long description, or you may just have a pile of word vomit.
It's well said, man.
Not to put too
fun. Man. I do the same thing with the 7 turning points that I mentioned. Like, again, it plots my novel, it plots my series, it plots my chapter, it plots my scenes, it plots my paragraphs. It plots like how my paragraphs flow. And when I tell people about that, they think it sounds tedious or like, oh, that's not writing. You're just doing the same thing. Like, no, it's really hard to like come up with a new catalyst every paragraph or a new catalyst every scene and a new big event and a new pinch and a new crisis. Like all these things, you have to do it over and over and over again. And it has to be new and it has to be fresh. Like that's the challenge, you know, of writing a really good story.
Well, you're not wrong that it's a challenge, but my response to that, if people say it's too hard to do that over and over, I say writing's hard. Suck it up, buttercup.
But they haven't tried it. Like they haven't tried to do it over and over. That's why. Like it's not like they're complaining about doing it. It's that they've never done it and they think it sounds awful, you know?
But it can save you from a lot of wandering. So to continue with the journey, I wrote Children of Doom. I wrote a bunch of short stories, and then I wrote The School, my Rangers in Space story. And then I rebelled against what I had discovered, and I said, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to go by structure. I'm going to go and write this amazing story idea I had, which was basically an interdimensional suicide cult where college kids discover a world where they can have all their dreams, but the only way to travel back and forth to it is to commit suicide. And you're not really sure if it's going to work or not. So I wrote a book called Parallels. And it came out, the first draft came out around 262,000 words because I Discovery wrote the whole thing and I let it wander. And some of the best scenes I've ever written in my life were written in that book, but the book sucks because I didn't know where I was going. I was just free writing whatever I wanted and introducing new characters every chapter. And like I really went down the wrong path. So I stuck that thing in a drawer and I said, okay, I'm gonna write a prequel to Children of Doom. I wrote Children of Earth. I plotted it, I outlined it, and I wrote it in about a month. And the whole process was so easy. I was like, why did I rebel? Why did I do this? It was just a complete waste of time. So then I wrote another novel called The Gap. And then I wrote another novel. So I started just writing more and more and more. Somewhere in there, I wrote Blind Spot, which was supposed to be a short story, but ended up being a
trilogy of novels.
But
is that one of your trilogy, Blind Spot?
That's book one of the trilogy. The cover is already done. It's at the editor right now. It's getting a copy edit right now, which I'm terrified to get it back. Just because
it's only gonna make it better.
I mean, I know that it will make it better, and I know that it's scary, but that's part of the hero's journey. You got to go into that cave where the dragon is, or that's where because that's where the gold is. But I'm sure we're going to talk about that plenty.
We're going to talk about that in just 1 minute. I'm really, really like psyched about all your books coming out, man. It sounds really cool. I'm going to play a little trailer here for your book that's currently out. Let's do that.
Okay. Jeez, man, it's amazing.
I don't know how smoothly that played.
That was awesome. You're hired. You're now my publicist. So,
I had fun with that.
To close the topic of Evil Grows in the Dark, I didn't really put Evil Grows in the Dark up there to try to sell a lot of copies. Although we had 2 days where I say we because honestly couldn't have done any of this without the little gang of writers that have kind of become my tribe. And I just want to say thanks to everybody, but we ranked in paperback sales the second day. So the first day we ranked in ebook sales, we almost got #1. I actually got a DM from another author in the top 5 that's like, you're not going to beat me. Said he dumped a bunch of advertising to not let me get #1. And then the second day I ranked in paperbacks in the top 100 and below the top 10,000 in the Kindle store, made a bunch of money. And now I'm like selling 5 books a day, but whatever. It was fun, but with no advertising. And that's all just based off of the people that watch these videos and hang out in our Discord group and this little tribe of people getting the word out. So thank you, everybody. It was really fun. And I apologize for any therapy that you will need for reading those stories.
Dude, when AuthorTube has to, they show up and they show up hard.
Yeah, they do.
I'll tell you what.
It's
I love
amazing.
this community.
It's amazing and humbling because I know these people they're busy people with lives and things to do, but they all shouted out the book, and I really appreciate it. I can't thank everybody enough. It really made me happy, and I will be here to do the same stuff for them when their stuff comes out. Promise you that.
Right on. All right, man. So, which character arc structure would you like to begin with? I figured that we would get the classic 3-act structure out of the way. What do you think?
I'd love to do that. What I would want to say about the 3-act structure is, first of all, that it can set you free. So I'm working with a fellow named Don White on his first book. And Don he's got what I would call an ear.
I believe he's in the chat.
Don has an ear for stories, but he when he got started, he's like, there's just so many things I can do. I don't know how to narrow it down into. You have to narrow it down to small chunks of questions that you can answer, things that you can discover, and to move forward. Otherwise, there's so much possibility you almost can't get started. So what I shared with him was the math of storytelling, and that's based off of Aristotelian 3-act structure. So I'm going to share some math with you. If you go, and the fact that this works in people's books that don't even know what I'm about to say just tells you how true it is. Aristotle told everybody that there's 3 acts. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end to a story. And when you say that out loud, everybody goes, obviously. The beginning sets them off. The middle, they face challenges. This thing sets up, and the end, it resolves, of course. We all act like it's some obvious thing. This is huge. Yeah. And then I'm going to tell you something else. It tells you exactly how many scenes you have to write and how long they need to be. And it can tell you how many words you have in each act of the book. So here's the formula, and I'm just going to give it to you right now. I'm going to put it in plain words. I'm not going to try to recreate Aristotle's discovery. All I'm going to say is this. 25% of your book is act 1, 50% of your book is act 2, and 25% is act 3, period. Discover about how long you like to write your scenes, or you can call them chapters if you want. I like to think in scenes because I don't think chapter has any real meaning. I don't know what a chapter is. Like what unit of story is that? A scene is where a value changes. We start one way and we end another way. It's a unit of change to me. So if you know you like to write, I like to write potato chip length scenes between 1,500 and about 2,300 words. I give myself a lot of leeway there because some scenes, you know, it takes a little bit longer, especially if there's a lot of internal things going on. An action scene, I can crank out 1,500 words and I can make the world blow up in 1,500 words. But sometimes if there's deeper things to get across and I want to do it subtly, I need 2,300. But let's call it that. So say you're writing a 100,000 word book. That's your genre. Your genre, 100,000 words is the standard. I like 100,000 because it's base 10 and I can do the math really easy. So it's 25,000 words, 50,000 words, and 25,000 words ish. You shouldn't be too, Nazi about keeping it exactly that, but it should be about that. And then now you know how many scenes you need in each act. You know how long each act needs to be. Now all you got to figure out is what has to happen in those acts. And that's where you can use something like the 15 plot points, story beats, save the cat, hero's journey. Now we're starting to create a map of questions that need to be answered in order for us to tell our story. And I honestly think that 3-act structure can be limiting. And I would honestly say that I almost break act 2 into 2 acts. But how do you see 3-act structure, Adrian? When you think 3-act structure, what pops into your head?
Well, in my research for today's episode, the graph that I always kept seeing is, even though there's 3 acts, there's 2 sides to each one. So you have this sort of rising, falling action that goes all the way up. I wrote down the 3 acts and each of the 3 points within each one. So if you'd like, I can share those with us. Let's take a look at.
Excuse me. Throw it up.
All right. I believe this is the first one, if I did it correctly. All right. So let me get rid of this thing that's covering half of our screen. All right. So in the Act 1, you have the exposition, which is the status quo, setting it up, the ordinary world being established. Then you have the inciting incident that gets the character into the story, the story into motion. And then the first plot point, which is what I'm talking about with that other side of things, which is the protagonist deciding to tackle the challenge, crossing the threshold, the story is naturally moving. That sort of thing. Okay,
so
that's the first act.
First 25% of your story, and I'm gonna layer over this kind of how I see it by the hero's journey. And we definitely need to get the 5 commandments of story, because I think there's a lot of utility with overlaying the 5 commandments with the hero's journey. So let's start with this. I think number 1 is extraneous, because we have to establish the ordinary world no matter what. And calling it exposition, I actually have a little bit of a problem with that. So this is Gustav Freytag.
I agree with that.
Freytag, or I never say his name right. I apologize, but he lived in the 19th century, and I doubt he's going to roll over his grave if I mispronounce his name. So he designed his pyramid for tragedies. So some of the way that it doesn't always work for every story. In fact, he didn't really think the other stories were worth telling. So it's kind of a limiting methodology. But he would call it exposition, which means here is the people, here's what they're doing, here's how their world is. And then he would start a rising action that would like pull them out of the ordinary world. This is the same thing as the hero's journey. The hero's journey's the first stage is the ordinary world, meaning this is the palette that we're painting on. This is where we are. This is where the characters are. This is what they're doing. I would like to say that it does not have to just be exposition. I think they should be doing something. One of my favorite quotes, I think it's Elmore Leonard, said, somebody better want something in the first paragraph, even if it's a glass of water. I don't think you should ever write exposition. Somebody should be after something, and they should be after it in the first paragraph. One of the things that pisses me off the most, and I've been guilty of it, I think I actually did it in Something Missing, is where they set the scene by telling me like what the place around us looks like. Although in Something Missing, I did it to throw in a cheeky, clever line that's foreshadowing. Anybody that wants to go read the book, go check it out. Talking about insects screaming to wake the dead. That means something. But anyway, my point is, you got Freytag's pyramid up. There you go. Awesome. And I
figured I'd show people what you were talking about.
I honestly think this is a flawed structure, unless you're writing a tragedy where the hero fails in the end, in which case, go for it. This is perfect. So in the ordinary world, things are never perfect in paradise. So we know we have to shake our character out of basically whatever they're doing is working kinda right now, but they have to want something. So I don't like describing the first iteration as exposition, because exposition is just telling. It's telling us what's going on. I honestly think we should show that they need to change right off the bat, because change is what stories are. Like the people need to change. The value at stake needs to be threatened and change. It's kind of a big deal, Adrian. And exposition to me is the wrong word. So what I would say is we need to discover the main character's wants and needs fast. So even as
maybe discovery is a better word.
I like that. Expand on that. So you would call it, okay, we're rewriting the script right now.
So you can call it the setup, you can call it exposition. What you're really trying to say is this is the discovery of this story, the discovery of the new world, the discovery of the character and what they want or what they need, if what they need is change.
I think of it as if you're sitting in like a theater in an audience, you're about to see a play. I know that's not an experience anybody really has these days with COVID, and probably not even in the modern era. We all watch movies, but imagine the curtain's about to be pulled open and you're going to see the set.
Everyone's seen Hamilton.
We're going to pull the curtain open and we're going to see this place, and we need to understand it quickly, but the place has to be subservient to the wants and needs of the character. So even that, even where you unveil the curtain is critical. I read the first chapter of your book and I sent you a little feedback on it. And one of the comments that I gave you was, don't let the opportunities go by to reveal the world and what the problems are in every sentence and every paragraph. And I think you were describing a hover car driving through the city, and my comment was, I need to know if this thing is throwing sparks in his ancient piece of crap. Is this a dirty, loud, rough world, or is it a clean, smooth, antiseptic world? And that matters, because the people's wants and needs that are in that car are going to be affected by their surroundings. So I need to know what those people want, and I need to know the obstacles in the way, and I need to know it fast. So that's why I go against the grain on the whole exposition side. I love calling it the ordinary world, but the ordinary world doesn't have to be ordinary. It can be amazing. If you're writing a book where magic users ride dragons half naked and throw fireballs, that's the ordinary world there. But we need to know what it is. We need to know what it is fast, and we need to know why it's in the way of our main characters getting what they want and getting what they need. And by the way, they can never have both. They can't have what they want and what they need. They can get one or the other. And
exactly,
driving towards one should drive them away from the other. And that's before an inciting incident. I should know all that right away. I can give you examples if you want. We can talk about Neo in the Matrix, which, by the way, follows the hero's journey to a T.
Yeah, and I mean, one of my favorite movies of all time, in my opinion, one of the greatest film masterpieces of all time, down to the script. I mean, it was the structure that is, and yet it's still creative. It gives you this, incredibly vague opening that entices you and gets you excited. Like, that movie is seriously perfect, man. I wanted to say, on the topic of Freytag's pyramid being a tragedy and all that, and how all these different parts seem to still follow the hero's journey, as you suggest. What I find interesting about Freytag's pyramid is the climax at the middle of the story. In other words, that's a big climactic event, and then it's down, and then it's a careen to a tragedy of an ending. And what I found in writing my own novel is that one of my three main characters is following this particular structure. Again, I didn't know that I was doing it at the time, but now I know that I am, so I'm trying to do it better. The idea that at the end of the story, what he wants and what he needs, he has to sacrifice both. And he has to do the thing that he does not want and he does not need, but someone else needs. And that therein lies the tragedy, that he has to sort of sacrifice his soul to, to end this crazy adventure, and it's the last thing he wants, and it's gonna destroy him. It's gonna wreck him and set him up for the sequels.
Well, but it kind of depends on your definition of need. I mean, he has to need to do it in order to sacrifice all these things. He has a need within him.
He needs to do it for someone else, not for himself.
Yeah, that is a need. The need to save someone else. That is a need. And apparently it's the one that drives him, because otherwise he wouldn't make that choice. It's really all about choices. So if you don't mind, I sent you a graphic. Could we throw up the hero's journey for just a minute?
And yes, I want to, but I'm having, I know how I'm going to do it.
I can share it.
I was having trouble. No, I got it. I got it right here. I'm just going to pull it up and share the screen. I'm going
to talk people through how you might be able to use the hero's journey to plot your story. And
okay,
that is not to say that this is a rigid guide. You can move things around, you can delete certain parts, but maybe we'll talk just for a second about how tightly the Matrix follows this, and then discuss why structure matters and like what I keep telling people you need to understand story structure, and the question I get back a lot is why. And it's actually harder to answer than you think, because
why?
you're like, I don't, I've watched a million movies. I don't see any of the structure. And then I start breaking it down like, oh, yeah, it's there. But then I didn't know it was there. So why does it matter? And I really want to talk about how it hits you in the undermind. It hits you in the subconscious. And I think if you ignore these things at your peril. Now, some people are naturals and write this stuff without ever studying in a minute. But I want to make sure there's two ways to use it. Let's just say this. You can use it up front to help you generate the ideas and the movements and changes in your story, or you can use it to diagnose a story that you've already written and you're not sure why something isn't working. All right, there we go.
Sorry, I'm trying to get it bigger, but it's a small image.
That's what she said. Sorry, man.
Let's do this.
Okay. So I love this graphic, and I love how it's a circle because it takes us kind of back to where we started. Now, that's a little bit of an antiquated thought because not every story, I think modern stories don't always end where they start. Like if you think about The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, they come full circle. They always end back in the Shire, right? So that would be probably the really kind of antiquated version of this. But let's start in the beginning. We've already talked about the first act. And if you see that nice line right across the hemisphere,
yeah,
come to 0.5, that's where you cross into Act 2. Then if you get to 10, it's just a giant, it's 50% of the circle. That's Act 2. Testile enemies, approach, ordeal, etc., etc. And then the final is just a couple of movements at the end. Now look at all that stuff packed up front.
Yeah.
We got a lot of work to do as writers right at the beginning. We got to establish the ordinary world. So let's talk Matrix. The ordinary world isn't just exposition because Neo's got problems. He's not happy. He's miserable. He's in his office. He doesn't sleep. He's hacking the internet at nighttime trying to discover what the Matrix is. He hates his job. It's just a banal, empty exercise in awfulness, going into the office and saying yes to Mr. Dickey or whatever the guy's name is. And so here we go. The call to adventure is when he's half asleep at his computer and the words come across the screen, Neo, the Matrix has you, and follow the white rabbit and all that stuff. Now, we don't 100% know what all that means, and that's okay. But we know that he has acquired his intention. He needs to discover what the Matrix is and break its hold on him. He needs to break out of this piece of crap life that he's living in. It's a call to adventure. Now, like most of us, it's tough to step out of our comfort zone. It's hard. It's hard to break even habits that are destructive. It is hard to break out of them. So a lot of times heroes refuse the call. And they come up with excuses why not to do it. I mean, if you want to talk some Bilbo Baggins, Bilbo's like, oh, adventures make you late for supper. And if you want to talk Star Wars, it's like, oh, my uncle needs me to help him with his moisture farm.
Yeah.
That's the grossest thing I've ever heard in my life, moisture farm. Anyway, or in Neo's case, he could lose his job. Like there's all these negatives, and you never know. You never know what's going to happen. When you step out of the ordinary world, you're stepping off a cliff. And we need to show that to our readers right up front. So the meeting with the mentor, I love to play with this because Gandalf is your uber mentor, right? He shows up, he's a wizard, he knows everything, he's old, he's got the beard, drinks wine, classy, So
smokes a pipe.
I like to spread the mentor out through multiple characters because sometimes a mentor is just who you need at that moment. It doesn't have to be the wise old man, wise old woman trope. And this is where you can start getting creative. But let's talk Neo for a minute. Who's his mentor? Who do you think it is? I think
I would
characters.
Morpheus is the obvious.
Morpheus is the second mentor.
Because
first
Trinity
mentor
comes
is Trinity. Because she comes to him in the bar where people are basically banging each other on the tables to Rob Zombie music.
As you do.
Place. Anyway, so she says to him, I know why you can't sleep. I know why you sit at your computer. I know why it's just frying your brain that something is wrong. She's the first mentor. She gives him the courage to move on, even though he's reluctant at every stage. He's reluctant when he gets in the car. He gives up in the office. He actually refuses the call twice, which is another thing I think is actually done. There are such a thing as heroes that don't refuse the call, but they never do it on the terms they're supposed to. You can't just say, yes, I'll take the adventure. It can never be that, because there's no tension there. There's no drama. So they either need to refuse the call, or they need to not do it the way you wanted them to. Like, for instance, if you say, hey, we're going to go on this journey, you're going to come with us. And you go, right. And then you leave before them and take off down the trail. Like, there has to be something that's not exactly as it's planned. That's refusal of the call. Meeting with a mentor is just someone giving you that little push, or teaching you a tiny lesson, a seed of something that's going to start driving you forward and driving the narrative forward. Crossing the first threshold. I love this part. Every time I'm trying to come up with a story now, I can't wait to come up with the first threshold guardian, because crossing that doorway can never be easy. Think of it like being born. It's not fun. You're getting squeezed out of a hole that you're not meant to. Okay, I need to rephrase it. It's never fun. But think of it as birth. Think of it as the act of coming out of the warm womb of your ordinary world. Even if it was miserable, it's still something into the unknown. This doesn't have to be a physical change in location. It can be a discovery that changes how you think about things.
In screenplay terms, I found this to be represented by what is called either the big event or the point of no return. So, like, the catalyst has happened, the hero is already involved in the story, but after this moment, nothing will be the same again. He cannot go back. Like with Luke Skywalker, for example, he could have, even once he hooked up with Ben, he could have still decided, you know what, I'm going to go back home and screw off all this stuff. I'm going to go back and go to Tashi Station, whatever. But by the time he comes back and his uncle and aunt are fried, there's no going back. Though his life will never be the same. He's in it now, and everything is different. You know what I'm saying?
So let's talk about Luke for a minute. He is a quintessential hero's journey guy, and I like how immature he is in the beginning, because he has to mature through the story. So the ordinary world is Luke is on a moisture farm.
Moist.
Anyway, he's on a moisture farm. He dreams about being somewhere else. He's a fairly reliable young man. He works hard. You know, he's kind of stuck in a rut that he can't get out of. And all his friends have gone off to either join the Imperial Academy and fly, or join the rebellion, or do anything but be moisture farmers.
Moist.
The call to adventure in the story, the global inciting incident, which people can argue about this, that it might be Princess Leia on the thing, but that's really a prologue.
Right.
The global inciting incident for Luke's journey is when he's cleaning the droids and the message pops up.
Agreed.
So
I have a video on this, by the way. I don't know if you know that.
I didn't saw that one.
I did it for a comic convention in Russia.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's in my videos on my channel. It's the Almaty Comic Con, and it's all about this. And I use Luke and Star Wars to go through the 7 points. So George Lucas is going straight Joseph Campbell here. Yeah.
What does Luke do? He's like, he knows that there's no guy by that name, Ben Kenobi, out in the desert. He knows he wants to know who the princess is. He knows. And then he goes, no, I can't do it. You know, we'll just clean you guys up and forget about this. You know, we got work to do. And his hand gets forced by R2-D2, who is playing the archetype of the Herald. He brings a message. He incites change. And then the droids run off. Luke chases him. Okay, now we're going to meet the mentor. Luke has refused the call. He's like, no, I'm not going to go find out what's going on with this poor princess who's captured. I'm just going to be a jerk and farm. He goes out.
Moisture farm.
He goes out and gets the sand people, beat his freaking brains in, steal his stuff off the land speeder, and he meets Obi-Wan Kenobi. And Obi-Wan Kenobi presents him with a new dilemma, which is now Luke has some responsibility, knowing what's going on and knowing that he needs help and knowing that he could save, potentially help.
Yeah.
Then he refuses the call. I can't do it. You know, it's the busy part of the season, blah, blah, blah. Can't do it. He comes back, and this was a brilliant turn because some choices are made for you, some choices you make. This removed all of Luke's defenses, and he says, "There's nothing left for me here now. I'll go with you. I'm leaving this planet." But he hasn't crossed the threshold yet. He's still on Tatooine. His boots are still in the sand, Adrian. And next thing you know, we have Threshold Guardians stopping him, and those are freaking stormtroopers shooting at the Millennium Falcon as it tries to get out. So he crosses the first threshold and in dramatic fashion flies off into space, Adrian, off the planet he's known his whole life. He's finally out in the stars. And in order to do it, he had to get shot at on the way. This is a perfect example of how to cross the threshold. Someone should try to stop you. You can't just walk through the door. There needs to be resistance. Being born is not easy. It doesn't feel good for anyone involved. Believe me, I watched my wife have 2 kids. She was not either time. She reminds me constantly. Anyway, so that is a perfect example of how to cram all of those things into your first act. And it's exactly 25% of the movie, by the way, almost to the minute.
I always found, especially with that prologue that you mentioned in Star Wars, I always found the length of that first act kind of bold. It always felt not that it lingers or anything, not that it's too long, but you notice what a huge chunk of the movie it is. You know what I mean?
And I can actually, and
it's significant.
I'm not going to do it here, but I can break down how Princess Leia actually has her own hero's journey through the whole story. She's an exceptional character, by the way. I think, and dude, when Carrie Fisher died, I had a really bad day because, like, she was a big deal to me as a kid. And those movies came out when I was
so
a little
badass
kid.
Too.
And no, she was a formative figure to me because it was like the first time when you're a little kid, it's the knights with the swords and, you know, the damsels get saved. She walks onto the bridge of the Death Star and tells the boss he stinks.
In the first scene.
Like, she was a formative figure to me.
Yeah.
To understand that women are freaking badasses. And ever since then, I've written a lot of women badasses in my time. And I really honestly give Carrie Fisher's portrayal of Princess Leia a lot of credit for that. But anyway, we're on to the next act. Let's just back up a step. So where's Neo in all this? Where's Neo in the Matrix and all this? He finally gets a taste of the danger.
Crossing the threshold for him is when he gets unplugged for the first time.
When he gets what?
Unplugged for the first time.
He takes the pill and he almost dies from the.
And he's literally reborn, like he's coming out of the goo.
They give us a straight birth scene. This is not an accident, Adrian. That thing was designed to give us that birth scene into a new world. He crossed a threshold. The Threshold Guardian was the threat of him dying in the process. So it kind of shows you how many different ways. It can be a literal person opposing you, or it can just be something difficult. It can be nature. It can be the weather. So if your characters are on a ship, a storm could be a Threshold Guardian. Or if you have to reach a place in a fantasy novel, a mountain range can be in the way, like it is in The Hobbit. The Threshold Guardian and the Hobbit are the underground goblins and then the wolves that chase them. So, like, it just depends on how you want to set it up. So Neo crosses the threshold, and now all of a sudden he's on the Nebuchadnezzar. Luke flew off into space. Now he's on the Millennium Falcon. But now we got to figure out who's on our side, who's against us, and this is the hardest section of any book to write for everybody. It's the middle, the mushy middle, right? The doldrums. The hardest part to get through, man. And here's what I would tell you. This is where your bit players need to get less than bit players. I need to know who these people are. I need to know why they tie into the hero. And I need to start seeing their arcs. So this is brilliantly done in Star Wars by we start to understand how Han Solo sees the world. And they give it to us in just little snippets. But it's beautifully done. I don't know why George Lucas couldn't write like that later in his life.
Yeah, what happened?
I don't know, man. But anyway, we get to see, like, Luke's in there waving his lightsaber around, trying to learn the Force, and we get Han's. They give us his life philosophy in a couple of sentences, just like that. And all of a sudden, he's a fleshed out character, not just a guy in a bar. And by the way, Han shot first. So he literally says, you know, I don't believe in hokey religions. I believe in what I can touch, see, and feel. I'll take a good blaster any day over your. It's like 3 lines, and you know him.
Yeah.
You know him right then, all the way down to the bones. So if you're a writer and you're getting into the middle, tests, allies, enemies is number 6. Test allies and enemies. Tests. Luke is taking a test right there. He's trying to stretch out with the Force with the blast shield down. He's trying to discover his new abilities. Also, we're fleshing out his allies. Also, in the meantime, we're cutting back and forth to the Death Star, getting more about thank you, Bethany. Han shot first. Getting more about Governor Tarkin and the lengths they'll go as they torture Princess Leia, and like we're discovering how bad the enemy really is. We're learning all these things. So this is the time to craft, like to sew together all these different elements. Who are the bad guys? Who are the good guys? What makes them tick? What are they going after? And what's in their way? I'm telling you, people get scared of this part of writing your book. This should be where you're the most excited. Because now you get to make it all make sense, right? You've basically, as Neil Gaiman says, you've got a flashlight and it only shines so far, right? You can only see this far ahead.
Yeah.
Well, this is the part where you get to dig in and really discover who these people are going to be in the next 100 pages. You got anything to say about that before we move on?
Dude, I mean, it's hard to stop you because you're on such a roll. The flow of the story, especially in that big middle part, I know that a lot of people find it intimidating, myself included. I struggle very, very much with the middle of my novel right now. And it's not because I'm not following the structure per se. It's more about this sort of pressure that I feel to have the middle of the story be incredibly exciting and fast-paced and turns and this and that. And so, like, sometimes it helps to just go right back down to the basics and just keep it, you know, smoothly moving, as you're saying.
So here's a game I play with myself here.
Heyo.
It sounded really gross. Here is a way I challenge myself at this stage of the story. I try to come up with 3 ways that my main protagonist is going to be tested. It doesn't mean he's going to succeed or she's going to succeed. As a matter of fact, I'm writing the sequel to Blind Spot right now. It's called Forbidden, after the forbidden fruits of the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So my heroine fails miserably at several tests put before her. She does it spectacularly in an exciting fashion with lots of gunfire and ass kicking, but she fails. She fails moral tests. Design in the beginning of your middle build, your second act, I would honestly say you should design some tests for your character's skills and character, meaning their moral character, like how they make decisions, how they weigh the world, how they see the world. Don't tell us how they see the world. Design 3 or 4 things that are going to tell us who they are. I'm always talking about characterization should never be done on a character sheet. It should always be done by designing actions. If your heroine is a plucky, brave, awesome person, you better show us this lady being plucky and brave and awesome. Don't tell me she is, because I don't care.
Yeah.
And instead, if you can't figure out what happens next in your middle build, design a series of situations in which their moral structure gets freaking challenged, or their skills get challenged, or their presuppositions, what they think about the world gets challenged. That's how people get bent around the axle about, like, should they like climb a mountain or kill a dragon, or that stuff matters less than you think. What really matters is how the characters, how they have to change. And we're going to get into that with 5 Commandments of Story. Do not let me forget to get into that at some point, because I'm going to show you how that can drive change. And then we've got to get them out of this place, and we've got to start dragging them closer to where the real first test of who and what they are is, and that's the ordeal. In order to get to the ordeal, we have to get through the approach. Adrian.
And the ordeal, in essence, is the midpoint of the story then.
it can be. I like to mess with that. So I will be perfectly honest here. I think of the middle build as 2 acts a little bit. I don't let that freak me out, but I want 2 challenges, and I kind of play with where I put it. So the ordeal has to happen. And some people call that the black moment. Like if you read Save the Cat, you're going to get the all is lost moment, right? That's the ordeal. So this is a place where we have to explore a rebirth motif. In other words, the thing that our character always was has to die, and they have to become something new. They may not have it fully fleshed out yet. They may not really fully understand what that is, Adrian, but they have to be something else now. They can't go on the way they were. So I'm going to tie this into 5 commandments of story right now. Exciting incident knocks you off balance. Progressive complications make it harder and harder to get what you think you need to solve the problem. And then we come to a crisis question. A crisis means I can't keep doing what I did. I can't do it anymore. I have to change in some way to solve this problem. And there's only 2 ways you can ever write a crisis question. Adrian, I will never go backwards on this. And I'm telling you, writers, if you listen to anything I ever said, I want you to listen to this right now. There's only 2 kinds of crisis questions. It's either the best bad choice or irreconcilable goods. You can never give them a good choice because it's boring. No one wants to read a book where a guy's like, either I burn alive or I live happily ever after. Because you always know what they're going to do.
Yeah.
There's no drama. There's no tension. There's only 2 choices a character can make at this point of the story. And a matter of fact, in every scene to some degree. As a matter of fact, in every beat.
The crisis question in the Matrix. Where would you put that?
Neo has been told by the Oracle that he's going to have a choice. He'll either have his life or Morpheus's life.
The best bad choice.
That sounds like a best bad choice.
Yeah. Going into the Matrix to save him is his choice.
Morpheus is captured. Everybody's telling him there's agents in there.
Yeah.
3 of them. No one's even beat 1.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, they're challenging him. Why do you think you can do this? Why? He says, I believe something. I believe I can bring him back. He made a choice. He chose his life. He chose Morpheus's life over his. And there's a big Jesus motif going on there, by the way, that the Wachowski brothers are, I guess, sisters now.
Siblings.
I'd name them, but brilliantly explored there. And so.
Oh, no. Look at Bethany.
Go watch it, Bethany. It's perfectly written. You'll get it in 2 seconds.
One of the best stories ever told, Bethany. Really, the first Matrix movie.
Anyway, but this is the perfect. By the way, 5 commandments of story in every damn scene in the Matrix. I can break it down for you if you like, but probably that would get really old, really fast.
We'll talk offline.
let's the approach to the innermost cave for Neo is a really cool scene. It's when they go into the Matrix and he goes, we need guns, lots of guns. That's the preparation for them to go into the cave. And the cave is the tower where the agents have complete sway and control.
Yeah, starting from the lobby scene.
They're indestructible. And then they kind of race through the last stages in the Matrix, but that's okay. Like I just wrote the ordeal and the reward seizing of the sword scene in my book Forbidden yesterday. And it happens in 2 scenes. Like it doesn't have to be some long drawn out craziness, man. You can get this stuff done quick. So let's talk about the road back. The road back in the Matrix is a running fight scene, and it's amazing because he's struck a blow at the enemy. He has seized the sword, meaning he's discovered he can dodge bullets, and he is so far beyond what he ever thought he was. He's found his talent.
Yeah.
Discovered his power.
His power.
And he did things that no one could have ever guessed he could do, and they're all starting to believe in him. Matter of fact, the seizing of the sword moment to me is when he wraps his arm around that cable of the helicopter as it's falling below the side of the building. Like he's not going to let Trinity go down.
Yeah, there's that moment where he's watching the helicopter, and you can see his wheels turning. You can see him going wait a minute, I can do this, you know, and just taking control like that. That scene always gets me, man.
I don't even think it's I can do this. I think he says I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
He doesn't even know how. He doesn't even know if it'll work. But he wraps his arm around it, and next thing you know, he's pulling her up. And a great line from Morpheus that cements the moment. He goes, "Now do you believe?"
Yeah.
And Trinity's like, "Oh, oh."
Uh-huh.
Oh, it gives me chills just thinking about it. It's so perfectly crafted moment.
Freaking love that movie.
Let's talk about the road back.
Hit me.
The enemy's never beaten in the ordeal. They come back harder. So the road back, the agents got shot up and Neo looked like a champion, but now, guess what? Back to reality, buddy. You got to run from these guys. They're coming to get you. They can't have you escape with the sword, and the sword is your newfound power. So they're chasing down Neo. They need to get the sword back. They can't let this guy go through life thinking he can challenge the system. So they're chasing him, and it comes down to this final moment, and that's the resurrection. We need Neo to die and be reborn again. We need that moment. We have to have it. He has to. This is where he truly is forged by the fires of his experiences. And that moment is when Agent Smith is just beating him to a freaking pulp, and he got away. We have this wonderful moment. It's got a great thriller double ending where like it looks like the fight's over, but it's not. He's chasing him. And then he just blows him away, just putting bullet after bullet into him. And you can't believe it's happening. You can't believe he's dying. They wouldn't do this. They wouldn't kill Neo. And it's brutal. He shoots him in the guts, Adrian. It gives you this feeling of helplessness, the way they do it.
Like, oh no, it's over. Like it's
beautifully done.
All wrong.
And he's just sliding down the wall, and he finds his way back, and he's reborn. And now he is not Neo anymore. He is... He's no longer Mr. Anderson. He's Neo now for real, and it's one of the most beautiful little turns in a story I've seen in a long time. There's books that remind me of it. It's so hard to discuss books with people because I never know which books they've read.
Yeah,
I could go into like crazy detail on this same moment in Ender's Game, Orson Scott Card's book, but I don't know if everybody's read it. But almost everybody's seen The Matrix.
I find the same challenge. So whenever I'm talking about storytelling, I usually use movies as references. I know people have, for the most part, seen The Matrix.
I do too.
Star Wars.
So let's jump to Star Wars for a second.
Okay.
Luke has a moment that's completely different design, but fulfills the same function of the resurrection. He's inside the X-Wing, and he's in that trench, and everybody's already died there. He's got Darth Vader on his tail. Like, everybody's missed. And he has a voice in his head telling him to turn off the thing you aim with. That's a scary... Like, if you drill down into that, like, what would that mean to you? It's like you need to close your eyes and fire this one shot that's life and death for everybody. And he has that moment where he lets what he used to believe die, and he embraces, the teachings of his mentor, and he becomes, in that moment, really, that's the moment he becomes a Jedi. Because he shuts off the targeting computer. It moves out of the way. He closes his eyes, and with the fate of the galaxy in his hands, surrenders himself to that moment and fires. And I don't think a lot of people appreciate how crazy deep that is.
Especially the fact that, and nobody talks about this, but he has to move it. Like, he has to make it turn. His shot bends. He shoots forward and it goes down into the Death Star. That's not normal. Like, he had to use the Force to make that shot. There was no other way to make it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the mechanics that George Lucas imagined, right? But the beat, the story beat, the moment of the hero's journey is clear and well defined. And here's the challenge that I would turn into every writer as you're looking at these stages. What can you do with that moment? What can you do that's special and amazing and different? You can use this in love stories. You can use this in a heist story. You can use this in a crime novel. You can use this in a thriller. These movements just give you questions that you can creatively answer to drill down from all of the amazing possibilities out there in the universe down into something concrete that you can think about and discuss with friends and work on in the privacy of your office or wherever you write. And to me, that's what real art is. It isn't saying fuck structure. I'm not doing what, fuck you, I won't do what you tell me, Rage Against the Machine. Like, the real art is innovating the chair, innovating the ordeal scene. I mean, think about the ordeal in Star Wars, the first movie. We get them down in the trash compactor.
Yeah.
Luke is literally put underwater. He dies. He's down too long. He shouldn't be able to breathe anymore. He's dragged down by a monster no one can see. Let's start like putting together these images into what they really are. And it's actually an amazing moment. And they're not going to kill the main character right now. No way. But there's a moment when you first see that movie, you're like, is he coming up?
Yeah.
And you can see it on Han and Leia's faces.
I was just going to say that you can see it on their face. So it's projected onto you as the viewer because you're like, wait a minute, they're not sure.
Did you notice that Carrie Fisher and Harrison Ford stop yelling for a moment and are just staring at the water? They almost are starting to accept that he's gone.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
Yeah, that moment's intense. People don't talk about that moment.
So, and let's finally go with the final stage, Return with the Elixir. And I'll give you both in Matrix and in Star Wars because they're great examples. In Star Wars, I won't use Lord of the Rings because they return with the Elixir like 73 times in the movie. So the end of the movie is like longer than the whole movie. But Return with the Elixir. So it's the reward scene. It's where you kind of get to metabolize what's happened and how people have changed. So now you got the farm boy, the scoundrel, standing up in front of all these people. They were both had no respect. One was living in obscurity on a desert planet. No one knew his name. The other was actually the kind of guy most of these hardcore, freedom fighting rebels would probably think he was just a piece of shit. Han Solo, smuggler, smuggles drugs. He's a drug smuggler. And there they are standing up. They've changed. Now they're heroes. And you actually get to see that it's kind of an archaic version of this, to be honest with you. A medal on the chest, standing in front of an adoring crowd clapping. It's very archetypical, right? I like one in the Matrix way better because he's just walking down the street in his new badass trench coat and sunglasses, and he's talking to the machines. And he's not telling them, hey, I'm going to kill you. I'm the best. It's not what he's doing.
He's very calm.
He's
very reserved.
And
matter
not
of fact.
That, but he's not hating his enemy. He's saying we need to develop a new relationship. This can't go on the way that it has. So he's returned with what he's learned is that there's not a way forward, you against us and us against you. The way forward is together. And I think that's one of the most amazing Return with the Elixir scenes that I've ever seen.
We got our first Get Out Richard of the night.
I can't see the chat right now, so I have no idea what's going on.
I mean, honestly, mostly they're listening to us.
So what I do, Adrian, when I start writing, when I have idea generation, first thing I do is just brainstorm and just keep telling myself what might happen in the story. I get it all down as fast as I can. Then I break out these stages in Scrivener and I make a note card for each one.
Okay.
And I start asking myself what could be. I literally start with the hero's journey. And then I overlay that with the 5 commandments of story, which we could talk about if you like.
Yeah.
I've been rambling for so long. I don't know if anybody wants to hear me talk anymore.
Not at all. I wouldn't call that rambling at all. Okay, so for me, I usually start with plot. I mean, I visualize my characters and all that, but I'll start with what again, my version of the 5 commandments of story, the 7 turning points of a screenplay. I just start with that. Like, what is my story? What is the plot? What's going to happen in it? And because I'm an outliner like that, so I basically outline that first. And then I just keep expanding on every little part of it until it all fills in. The starting with the hero's journey is interesting to me. It's this idea that you're beginning with this character's journey, not necessarily what adventure he's going on, but what's going to happen to him, what's going to, or her, what are they going to change within themselves in this story? What is the story about?
Well, I wouldn't say that I start with the hero's journey. I start with what if questions 90% of the time. I'm like, what if? So I'll use my story, The Gap. What if there was another world with...
I agree with that, Benjamin.
Yeah, he's got a point.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I start with what if questions. I'm going to use my story, The Gap, as an example. My book,
Fall into,
which eventually I'll write into a series because I love that story. But The Gap is what if question. What if in the future mankind had to skip to other dimensions because the Earth was dying, and each of these dimensions had effects on humanity once they came there that they did not expect. And one of the dimensions, people were sent to different dimensions to, populate them and to try to thrive there. And they wanted to kind of spread the possibilities. So they went to a lot of different places. Well, one dimension was basically heaven. Like everything works great there. You're immortal. Everyone's happy. It's easy to thrive there. But one of them was hell. And there, like, everyone was infected with hatred, like to a level that it would burn them. And then that their hate was so palpable, it had physical effects around them. And they're just miserable and tortured there. And then generation after generation, people grow up there hating all the others that got to go to the other dimensions that weren't hell. And they became the enemy. And then all of this stuff occurs outside time. And in our modern era, a man accidentally finds his way through a portal and discovers these other worlds. And his mission becomes to stop the people from the dimension that is soaked in hatred and fire from taking their revenge on all the other realities. So, and that story, that's the what if question that started. And then I've got that, okay, I've got a protagonist. And then I'm like, okay, well, what's interesting about this guy? Let's describe his ordinary world. I decided to make him a drug addict. And that he was, because he could sense these other dimensions, that hatred was leaking into him. He was self-medicating and estranging himself from his family. Okay, I got an ordinary world. And then I put that hero's journey out there for me. And I'm like, okay, well, what is his ordeal? What is it about how he has to change? And what physical actions can I put in that make him change inside? So I need to give him a challenge that's going to make him change on the inside. And that is, man, it is so much fun to do this. Like, people think of outlining as being some dry, sterile activity. I don't. I think that outlining and creating the movements of the story is one of the most amazing and creative adventures that a writer can go on. Because I've got to birth out of nothing the challenges that will shape everyone's opinion of my characters, of the world. I mean, God, dude, to me, it's one of my favorite things to do in the world. I need to shut up. What do you got?
You don't need to shut up. Look at what people are saying, dude.
I just every once in a while I blink and I'm like, you haven't stopped talking for like.
Yeah, man, it was interesting because when I thought of bringing you on the channel, I was brainstorming different episode ideas, and I kept coming back to, how am I gonna corral Kent Shawn? And then I was like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna have him on an episode about story structure and just let the dog off the leash, man. So just let the pit bull go in.
So I would honestly say, though, that I wish I'd known this stuff when I started. And so kind of what I've done on my YouTube channel is I've tried to help everybody jump over the fences that were in my way when I got started. And I don't know if I've succeeded at that, but man, I sure have tried. And if you want to check out Hero's Journey outlining stuff, I've actually gone in person with a couple of people. I think it's like 5-6 people now. And I've done little private for free. I'm not charging anybody anything, classes on how to start brainstorming and outlining. And I have some unusual ideas on how to brainstorm. I call it the power of 10. I'm trying to come up with a better word because it's used for a lot of things. On how to ask yourself the right questions when you start writing a story so that you can come up with a really good idea. I may do something with it at some point, but I don't know. But I will tell you this, Adrian. I'm so excited about this stuff every day of my life. I never get tired of thinking about it or talking about it. And anybody that wants to talk about it with me, check me out. Come to KentShawn, author@gmail.com. Send me an email. Drop me a line. come to my website. I got a brand new website about to pop up in the next couple of days.
Hold on, man. I got your back. I got your back right here.
Thank you. If you
There
guys,
you go. Boom.
Here's the thing. I honestly believe this from the bottom of my heart, and this has come up a lot of times. I actually talked to Adrian about this last night, and I apologize for drunk dialing you, Adrian.
Not at all, man. That was fun.
It was right after the UFC fight, so I was like flying through the roof, excited.
Yeah, you were hyped.
And I talked about this with some of the folks that have been on Don't Drink and Live. Like, I really believe in building a community of people where we help each other, and that we strive to take, the best parts of everyone, put it into a collective, and see what we can do, not just as individuals, but as a group of creative people.
Everybody in the chat is talking about how you should consider doing live workshops.
I just don't know if I'm good enough.
Oh, all right, knock it off. So look, man, there's so much knowledge in that crazy head of yours that these folks want out of you. Now, what you do with that is up to you, whether you're just doing some live streams, some videos on your channel, whatever. Personally, I think you should go ahead and maybe make a series of workshop videos or live events, open up a Patreon, have people sign up for $1, and just release those on a Patreon or something, dude. A little extra income for you to put back into your publishing funds and whatnot. And everybody gets to freaking learn how to write like Ken Shawn.
I don't know.
I mean, look at this. Look at this. Look at this.
Thanks, Richard. I really appreciate that, man. Hey, these are my people. These are my tribe.
Not this one. She don't know you.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you so much. But
okay, hold on.
I love it. So I will say that I'm like nonstop humble. Hey, shut up. That's a Amazon best-selling editor, Bethany Votaw, talking right there. Why ain't she shouting out what she did? I don't know. Anyway, I would say that having these conversations about structure, I think is critical. And I would like to take, Adrian, if you don't mind, I would like to discuss the 5 commandments of story. Just
go for it. Run them down for us.
I honestly think we can skip to the head of the line. I think we can take ourselves out of where we're kind of floundering and wondering if we're on the right path, and we can kind of jump ahead of all the giant mass of people just wandering their way through discovering writing by, first of all, creating a common language that we all speak and we all know what we're talking about. So that I can say to Adrian, I sensed a weakness in your inciting incident. I didn't actually, but I'm using this as an example. And you would know what I mean. Like, it's a shorthand. It's a way to communicate that is clear and defined. I actually had a horrible argument with a guy that I like, the story detective, about the inciting incident in Star Wars. We were just calling different things, different terms. And I kind of dug my heels in, which I kind of regret. But the reason I dug my heels in is that I can't call everything 50 different names. And that's the reason I stick with the 5 commandments of story and the hero's journey. Because I want to communicate in a language that when I say inciting incident, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So the neat thing about the 5 commandments of story is that they fit in every unit of story. And that I want everyone listening and everyone that's kind of in our tribe, Adrian. By the way, you're a wonderful member of the tribe. I'm so happy to have you here, man.
Thank you.
Seriously, you're a beautiful dude, and I'm super excited about your writing. Not that kind of beautiful. Quit preening, you freaking weirdo. Anyway, I want to create a
oh no, they're on to me.
I want to create a common language in our community based off of these greats that invented it. I didn't invent it. Where we can talk to each other about these things and that we know what we mean. Because the woo-woo, I felt like it was it's hard to communicate.
Yeah.
If I tell you, hey man, your complications aren't progressing. Like the initial complication is bigger than the last one, meaning it didn't progress.
Right.
We can talk. you could say, you're right. Oh, I got to ramp this last one up. Or if I say, hey, man, that choice that they made, that crisis question, they had an easy choice. That can't be, or it's boring. And we could just talk about that and know what the other person was saying. So let's go through the 5 commandments of story real quick, if you don't mind, Adrian.
Go for it.
All right.
Do you have anything visual you wanted me to share for it, or are you just gonna write it down?
No, I'm sure I could make something in like 3 seconds.
Go for it. No, don't worry about it. Go for it.
Number 1 is the inciting incident. And this can mean an inciting incident of a scene, of an act. So I'm just going to tell you right now, every one of my acts, I have a 5 commandments of story. Every scene has 5 commandments of story. Every total story has 5 commandments of story. I make sure that I can identify. If I can't, there might be a problem. It's like a diagnostic tool. You don't necessarily have to know them when you start, but by the time you're done, you should know. So here we go. Every story has to have an inciting incident, which means our character is going along the way that they were, and something knocks them off balance, where they cannot continue in the same fashion that they were doing before. That doesn't mean that they were happy. They could have a miserable life, and then the miserable life gets knocked off balance, and they have to change. I like to use the example. I don't know if anybody's read the Mistborn novels by Brandon Sanderson, but is it Vin? Am I messing up her name? Anyway, the main character in that story, she has a miserable life. She's working for a group of criminals who treat her like crap, and she has
Harry Potter has a miserable life.
Great example. He has a miserable life, but he gets knocked off balance by a letter from Hogwarts. So something has to happen that derails their normal life. That's an inciting incident. It has to happen in every scene. Otherwise, why are we looking at it? Why is the camera pointed at these people if nothing just happened that changed things? Be cautious and be wary of scenes that do not have an inciting incident. Something must knock us off balance, or it's not worth looking at. Second, progressive complications. What does that mean? It means that whatever the perceived solution to the problem of the inciting incident, it has to get harder to get to. So let's say you want a glass of water and you go to the sink and you pull the thing up and no water comes out. Well, that's a complication. I can't get my glass of water. You look under the sink and now you see that the hose has been chewed in half. What the hell chews hose in half in my house? Now I've got an animal in the house that I don't know about with sharp teeth. That's a progressive complication. Now I'm hunting an animal. All I wanted was a glass of water. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Let's give you another example. You're climbing a mountain.
That's
You've got a rope. You're perfectly safe. And then all of a sudden you slip and fall and your rope hits a sharp piece of rock and it breaks. Now you're hanging on by your fingertips to this mountainside. Things were complicated before. You were climbing the mountain. Then you fell. Well, that's a complication. Now your rope's gone. That's a complication. You're about to reach a crisis, which means a place where you have to make a decision that you can't take back. Remember, I told you that there's only 2 kinds of crises, a best bad choice or an irreconcilable good. That's not true in life. We get good and bad choices all the time. I can choose to not pay my bills, but guess what? They're going to kick me out of this house. The mortgage company, the bank will repossess my house and kick me out on the street. So I'm going to pay my bills. It's an easy choice to make. But not so much when you're on the side of a cliff. And you can either choose to jump to your right and try to grab onto the branch of a little wizened tree growing out of the side of the cliff, or you could choose to try to slide down the mountainside and hope that you can grab something below you, but you can't see anything. So you have to choose the far jump that's incredibly difficult, or you have to choose to slide down and hope something works out on the way down. Holy shit. Now that's interesting. What choice will the character make?
Third choice, continue climbing, which can be its own just curse.
Whatever it is, man. I mean, like, this is where your creativity comes in, and that you can make these decisions. But you must know that the scene is leading up to a choice. If you go back and reread your draft and you have scenes where no one's deciding anything and things are not becoming more complicated in the scene, you've got a problem, because no one's going to come with you. Because if everybody's just floating through the universe without having to make choices, especially not hard ones, then why would we read? Next, you get a climax. So you make a choice. You make a choice, and now we got to see what the hell happens when you made the choice. He jumped for the branch. I mean, sometimes they grab it, sometimes they don't. Sometimes we got to fall. Like, we got to see what happens. And the climax is where we see them make the choice. The climax of a scene or a story or an act is when they make that hard choice and succeed or fail or create whole new problems.
Yeah.
Hopefully the reader didn't see coming. Then you got a resolution. That's when you get to metabolize what's happened and discover what it all meant. Now, this is a complicated area. I did a whole video on this because it's very complex. A resolution of a scene doesn't necessarily happen in the scene. It may happen 3 chapters later. You need to be clever and creative with your resolutions. You need to pepper them through your story. Sometimes you need to have a cliffhanger. Sometimes we need to leave him dangling from the edge of the cliff to find, that's a literal cliffhanger, to find out, and then maybe not find out a chapter or so later what happens to the guy. But everything must resolve. If we leave open questions, that's because it's a series and we're trying to get them to buy the next book. Otherwise, we need to close those questions and then tell them what it meant. Tell them what it meant for them to make that decision. And that's especially important in resolutions of books. I don't know if Bethany's still here, but she read my book, Charged.
She's still here.
It's a book I wrote one of the books I wrote last year. And I really struggled with the resolution scene because I did know I was going to write sequels, but I also wanted it to close down and I wanted to what did this all mean? I had this.
It has to stand on its own, even as part of a greater whole. Very,
very well said. I had this great revenge story that turned into the hero not just wanting revenge anymore, but coming to care about other people more than himself and kind of growing up. He's a wisecracking jerk who has only ever cared about himself. And through the story, he kind of learns to not be a piece of total crap. But in the end, I wanted a more traditional ending where he was kind of content, and the people, and I don't usually write that. If anybody has read my stuff, usually my stuff ends with horror or awfulness or everybody dies. And I wanted to do something different, and I struggled with it. And I asked myself, well, what did this mean? You wrote 100,000 words. What did it mean? What were you trying to say by all of this, other than, have some fun, blow some stuff up, people do awesome stuff. What did you mean? And I thought about it for a minute, and I think I wrote one of my better resolution ending scenes in Charge that I've ever written in my life. And because I paid very close attention to this stage of the hero's journey, the return with the elixir. What did the main character learn? What did it mean to the people around him? And what gifts can he now give that he's learned these lessons? Because you can't just learn the lessons and keep them to yourself. That's not a good story. A good story is when they've learned all this stuff and now they hand it back out to their tribe. They share it with the world. And to me, that's probably the most satisfying ending to a story that you can have.
Right on, man. That's beautiful. I love it. The fact that relying on this structure, even playing with where everything goes, if you have the structure there, your story is going to have the heart that you want it to have. It's going to your characters are going to have soul. They're going to go, because you have to make them make those choices. And that's what everything comes down to in writing, is a character making a choice, and that telling you who they are, the unveiling of their inner self, whether if it's just to the reader or even to the character themselves. Maybe the character themselves doesn't know what they're made of, and this is how they find out. That's the beauty of the storytelling, man. That's what it's all about for me, is just peeling back the layers of these characters, showing what's deep down.
Quick shout out to Bethany Vota and her book Tracker. I can't give it away. She resolved
no spoilers
in a very interesting and satisfying way. And I remember closing it out and going, it's not necessarily a happy ending, but it felt good. And it felt good because
satisfying
character, I don't think I'm messing her up, just teasing the name. His name is Clay. Her main character is someone that you can love and hate at the same time. He's kind of a rough fella. And it's funny that Bethany wrote this guy because he's like the diametric opposite of her personality. But
Yeah.
I remember feeling like super satisfied when I closed the book. And I think that that's something, gosh, shout out to Victoria Wren too, for the second book in her series, Wild Spirit, The Curse of Wynn Adler. Again, like I shut the book going, it was great.
Yeah.
So don't ignore your resolution. Don't make sure that you give the people that spent however many hours reading your story, give them what they need at the end. Give them the satisfaction of understanding what it all meant. And if you do that, I think that's it's God, it's art, it's truth. It's really something special, and that I think it's a gift that only writers can give other people through the interdimensional magic of the written word on a page, that we can communicate through them through space and time and language. And someone sitting on a park bench somewhere that I've never met, that I'll never know, can get to the end of one of my stories and maybe just have a moment to reflect back on their life and what it meant to them. And to me, that's God.
My man, this is why you're here. This is why you're on my channel. This is why you're the first video this month. I'm kicking off something special for my channel this month, and I wanted to kick it off with you because that's a perfect note to go out on, man. I couldn't have wrapped this up better myself. Like, did you write that shit? That's awesome. All right, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna play our little trailer of yours one more time for folks who may have missed it the first time. Everybody, go out and pick up Ken Shawn's new book, Evil Grows in the Dark. It's $1. It's 99 cents. You have no excuse. Get it. 4 amazing stories. Lydia's mom. The information is in the description below. Ken Shawn's website, all of his information, it's all down there. Go click on it. Go to sign up for his newsletter as well. Oh, Ken Shawn, stick around after the stream. I want to talk about the newsletter. Let's take a moment here to thank my patrons.
Yay.
Colin Clark, been here since the beginning.
He's the man.
Colin Clark is the shit. Now, I have merch. I have a Discord. I have all that stuff. It's all down below. Our Instagrams are down below. Shoot us some messages if you like. I don't mean to speak for you, Kent, but I know that you welcome a lot of folks sending you stuff. Absolutely. I do as well. I want to take one last look at the chat before we get out of here. Everybody was talking about European currency and weird shit. I don't know what was going on in there. Like, they were going bananas. All right, what's I was going to ask the same thing. Very awesome work. Oh, thank you very, very much. Colin Clark. Yay. Oh, you guys are nice. Thank you so much. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Mr. Kent, any parting words for everybody in the chat?
I'll just say the same thing I always say to anybody that wants to write, man. Probably people getting tired of hearing me say this, but I'll never shut up. And that's the only place to get it done is butts and seats, fingers on keyboards.
Amen to that, brother. All right, everybody. Thank you very much. This has been outstanding. A great start to March. Be here next week. We're going to have Nina Moreno, best-selling author of Don't Date Rosa Santos. Amazing book. And one of my oldest friends in the world. So please show up. Make her feel welcome. Have questions for her, whether you've read her book or not. Show up for this because her journey as an author is phenomenal. I mean, on her debut novel, she gets published by Hyperion, a Disney company. That's significant.
Amazing.
So we need to hear her story. We need to learn from her and put that knowledge towards the publishing of our own books. Keep writing. Be bookworms. Sayonara, everybody.
Bye.